Has this ever happened to you? Now that's what happens when we use regular encryption to encrypt our secret messages.
But what about the Caesar cipher?
No, that's still classical cryptography, and that's less secure. It uses bits, which can only be 0 or 1. Why not try using quantum cryptography instead? Quantum cryptography uses qubits, which are like bits and can be 0 or 1, but can also be in superposition. So think about it like this. With a bit, there can only be 0 or 1, while with qubits, there can be superposition, which means everything in between. However, with quantum cryptography, there's one key thing to remember, the no-cloning theorem. When a particle is sent, it chooses a state, either 0 or 1. This is called measuring a particle. This particle cannot be changed or copied, so every measured particle is unique.
Remember this for later.
We can compare measured particles to these eyes of Ender. Although similar, at the end of the day, they're still very different from each other. Now that you've heard all of this stuff, I'm sure that you really want to hear about the history, right?
Not really.
It was originally called conjugate coding in the 1970s by Stephen Weisner, this handsome fellow over here, but eventually the term quantum cryptography and the most popular encryption algorithm were created in 1984.
Well, are we ever going to talk about the most popular encryption algorithm?
Yep, it's called the BB84 protocol. Before we get into what this is, let's familiarize ourselves with some key terminology. A bit can either be 0 or 1, simple, right? Next, a base is like a specifically shaped hole in the wall, and a photon is a shape that fits into that hole. A base will either be shaped like a cross or an X, and the photons will either be vertical, horizontal, or diagonal to fit into them. Here's Alice. Alice wants to send a secret encrypted message to Bob, but to decrypt this message, they must both have a key that they agree on. But how can they do this without the key being intercepted? To do so, Alice must choose bits at random, then the bases at random. Afterwards, she will format photons to fit these bases according to this chart. Then, one by one, she sends these photons to Bob.
But before Alice can send her photons over, Bob must make a guess at which bases she chose. So at random, Bob chooses cross or X bases, just like what Alice did at the start to capture the photons. Now that he's made his predictions, Alice can send them over. These photons are captured on Bob's end, and if Bob is able to guess Alice's bases correctly, the photon will properly send over, making it identical to the one she had. However, if the basis is incorrect, then the photon sent over will be random, either 0 or 1. Finally, Bob can convert these photons to bits and they will compare the results. To compare their results, they will only have to reveal the bases they chose, meaning this can be communicated publicly since the bits aren't being revealed. So how did they know for sure that they got the key correct? If they both reveal that their bases were the same, then they know that the photon matches since it was sent accordingly. If they reveal that their bases are different, then they can disregard and delete that bit completely since they know that it is random and may not match. They do this for the rest of the key until they have an entirely new one that they both agree on, and then they can finally decrypt that secret message. Now what if there was an eavesdropper? Well, remember the no cloning theorem from earlier? We're using this now. Let's say that Alice and Bob both have X bases and Eve has a cross one. When Alice sends her photon to Bob and Eve intercepts, she will get a random photon since the bases are opposites. Say she gets lucky and gets the same photon as Alice. Eve can't send Alice's exact photon and has to make one herself. She then has to guess the basis that Bob has, since again she doesn't know, and send a photon of that exact basis to go undetected. If she guesses incorrectly, Bob's photon will also be random. This process is a 1 in 4 chance for Eve, and in a key that is likely over 1,000 bits long, it is extremely low that she gets that 1 in 4 chance every single time. As a safe way to be completely sure though, Alice and Bob can share a few bits of their long key, like every third or the first 100 bits. Any mismatched bits that Eve sets off due to the low chances will tell Alice and Bob that there is an eavesdropper and they can get rid of the entire key and start again.
Well, what other things can you do with quantum cryptography? Ooh, are there jobs related to this field? I want to encrypt things with qubits.
Well, yeah, of course. Typically, to be a quantum professional, you need to obtain at least a bachelor's degree in a related field like quantum information, physics, engineering, mathematics, or computer science, but master's and doctorate degrees are preferred since much of this field is related to research. With those qualifications, you can pursue a career as a qubit researcher who works closely with the field of quantum cryptography.
One of the biggest issues in quantum cryptography is the misuse of power. In theory, quantum computers should be able to crack all kinds of regular encryption used today.
What the flip?
This means that things such as important financial transactions, medical transcripts, and blockchain would all be at risk. There are people who steal encrypted data now, hoping that new quantum technologies may be able to decrypt them later in the future. The development of quantum cryptography could also lead to inequality, and countries with more funding could have leverage over countries with less resources and finances. It could also lead to job loss, as regular encryption wouldn't be needed anymore. Well, I think we've talked enough about the negatives. What kind of positive impacts does it have?
While quantum cryptography has also had a huge impact on society. Notably, quantum cryptography was used to protect the 2007 Swiss election results in partnership with a company called ID Quantique. There have also been popular companies like Hyundai and Verizon who have used this technology to protect sensitive information from being leaked, and it was successful. Some new gadgets are also implementing this, like Samsung's collaboration with Korean company SK Telecom to create the Galaxy Quantum line, a phone that has built-in quantum encryption with VPN technology. So we can potentially start seeing more everyday devices having quantum encryption. And who knows, maybe we can see it being used to encrypt Minecraft servers.